Welcome back to Brazil Crypto Report. Today I'm joined by Daniel Cunha of Mercado Bitcoin and Fernando Martinez of Portal do Bitcoin. We discuss how Binance has found itself at the center of a Brazilian congressional investigation into cryptocurrency pyramid schemes. All right, so we are joined today by Daniel from Mercado Bitcoin and Fernando, who's a reporter at Portal do Bitcoin. Daniel and Fernando, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Aaron. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Aaron.
Amazing.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Great. So, Fernando, so you are a repeat guest on the show now. We had you on maybe about half a year ago. So why don't you give yourself a quick intro and then, or reintroduce yourself to our audience here quickly. And then Daniel, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself as well.
Okay. So I'm a journalist. I'm covering the crypto Brazilian system since September 2021. And the last several months, I've been covering these congressional hearings very closely. And we reached the end line here. So that's it, and we'll talk about it.
Amazing,
great, and thanks for the invitation, Aaron. Big fan of the newsletter, the podcast, and all the great work you've been doing covering the sector here in Brazil. So really a pleasure to be here. I'm executive vice president for corporate development here at Mercado Bitcoin. Been with the company for 4 years and around the same time in the industry. So excited to share a bit and take a bit of your thoughts and Fernando's as well on what this all means for all of us in the industry here.
Appreciate you both being here. And so basically the reason we're doing this recording today is today's October 11th, and we just had today's like the official conclusion of the CPI Committee on Financial Pyramids, which was mainly looking at cryptocurrency companies, also some other non-crypto companies. And we had a report that was issued by the committee this week, a final report with it was like 500 some pages worth of text, which I have not read it all yet, and I probably will not get to read it all. But there's a lot of information in there and some pretty important things. There was, there was 45 indictments that were issued or recommendations for people to be indicted. Based on the committee's findings, including 4 executives of Binance. And I want to really just get some voices in here to talk a bit about kind of what are the big takeaways from this committee and what are the big impacts on the market here that we should be paying attention to, and what are the next steps coming out of this committee. So Fernando, I'd like to maybe turn this over to you, just since you've been really on the beat covering this for the last 3 months since the committee was inaugurated. So if you wouldn't mind kind of walking us through, give us some background, just like what this committee has been doing over the last 3 months exactly.
Okay, so the congressional hearings started to really look into the pyramid schemes, Ponzi schemes, that are really a big thing here in Brazil, as we spoke on my last appearance on the show. So it was really focused on that. But on the midway, they started to look more to the market. And that's when Binance really entered the focus of the congressmen. And even they started to do inquiries about programs of ticket planes and etc., and it really diverted from the focus. So, but they started the congressional hearings to investigate the really big pyramid schemes that are happening in Brazil, and because so to explain a little bit, the congressional hearings in Brazil, the committees, they have the power to investigate, so they can break bank records, fiscal records, tax records. They can obligate a person to go there to speak, to give testimony. So they have a lot of power to investigate. So this final report shows a lot of things that we as press weren't able to read to find out. So we are finding now. So this is very interesting to us. We are seeing like in the middle of the structure that we are not able to see from outside. So, but yeah, the congressional committee, it was assembled to investigate the pyramid schemes, and Binance entered in the middle, and the crypto system as a whole entered to to make the Congress understand what is the crypto system, because it's a very gap, it's a huge gap between the Congress people and the crypto system. So it started that way. The congressman that initiated the whole process, it's Aureo Ribeiro, that is the congressman that proposed the law that become the Brazilian law of the crypto system. So he is a guy that really knows the system, but his peers didn't know. So I don't know if I answered, sorry, but
yeah, no, that's super helpful. And so basically they've been going for about 3 months. They've had, you know, a long list of witnesses that they've summoned, and they sought testimony from a bunch of different people. Some of these people they had to like, I guess, you know, forcefully like bring in to testify, or at least they tried to force these people to testify. There was some people, there's some, I think there's some you know, there's some legal disputes around like how legal it is to actually like force somebody to come and testify against their own will. And like there's some people that came and they were kind of going, you know, they showed up, but they didn't really say anything. You know, that in the US we would say they plead the fifth, right? Like the Fifth Amendment of not testifying against yourself, that type of thing.
You said, well, the day-to-day work, it was to bring those people to give testimony, and some of them were executives from exchanges, from regular companies, and a lot of them, the majority of them, they are suspects of crimes. So that was the process of working of these committees. And behind the scenes, they demand documents, they demand fiscal records, tax records, bank records, and etc. So that's the way they work, and they have the support from federal police, that's Brazilian FBI. So that's how they work.
Got it. And then, so Daniel, from your vantage point, maybe talk a bit about like what's been your sort of involvement in this process, or how closely have you been following this, and like what you want to add anything to what Fernando's been saying about what this committee's been doing the last 3 months.
Oh, sure. So I think, as Fernando mentioned, we, you know, among several other representatives from players in the industry, we've been invited to share. I think, first of all, you know, provide a good overview of what the crypto industry is about, right, and how it functions or should function within the broader financial system in accordance, I'd say, with, you know, the existing regulation and what will likely and hopefully soon be the actual crypto regulation that's coming up. So I think we were glad to have that chance, right? I mean, a lot of our concern around the form discussions could take was, you know, this is about pyramids or Ponzi schemes rather, and Ponzi schemes are not necessarily crypto related. We've had a number of them here in Brazil, and some with, you know, creative asset classes or denominations behind that have nothing to do with crypto, right? So one concern I think all the industry players had is, you know, how does this not become the crypto CPI or congressional hearing, right? And how do we take this opportunity to really provide clarity on why it is that so many pyramid schemes have been built around crypto, and you know, what we, as, you know, industry players, regulators, and authorities in general have to be paying attention and cognizant of to avoid propagation of similar schemes using crypto as the basis for them, and I'd say fairly easy, it seems, right, the way things have played out, fairly easy platform to run these schemes. So I think in that sense, our view of the outcome is very positive, and I have to say, somewhat surprisingly so. It's a fairly dense subject matter, as Fernando mentioned. There were some members of the committee with deeper experience in the industry that were involved in the discussions for the projeto de lei, the bill, the crypto bill here in Brazil last year. But a lot of the members know, right? And I think we were very positively impressed with what was a very clear, very technical, and very pondered, I think, final report, and one that clearly identifies where the loopholes or the illegal maneuvering rooms that have been left on the industry side or on the crypto industry side have been facilitating this sort of situation.
Got it. Well, thanks for that. And then I think one of the points of confusion, I think, some people have had around this is like, why is Binance getting pulled into this? Like Binance, at least as far as we know, is not a pyramid scheme. I mean, I hope to God that it's not a pyramid scheme. But I think that's basically the industry is dead if Binance turns into FTX. But I think the allegations or what the committee was really probing into was Binance being basically used as a medium for some of these pyramid scheme operators in Brazil, using crypto to basically launder funds out of the country, essentially. So whether it's the Faro de Bitcoins or the there's so many of these guys that Fernando's been covering over the years that hard to keep track of them all. But maybe talk a bit, I'd like to dive into like the four guys that got the four Binance executives who were like recommended for indictment here. But maybe Fernando, could you give some more color on like just why the committee was interested in Binance here? Like why were they so much more interested in Binance than perhaps any of the other big exchanges?
Sure. So the Guilherme Haddad, that is nephew of the finance minister from Brazil, he's the general director from Binance here in Brazil, and he went to the congressional hearing to depose in behalf of Binance, and one of the congressmen said, well, every one of the pyramid schemes that we saw that uses Binance to do their business. So you have a very intimate relation with these schemes. And Guilherme, the executive, said, "Oh, we don't have an intimate relation with them. They are a liability for us." And they went back and forth with their arguments. But the thing is, all of them used Binance on the past. I think it's because Binance it's the biggest in the world. They have a lot of liquidity, but the questions were raised. Well, they have a compliance system that doesn't filter anybody, because those guys are like dealing with billions, literally billions, and they are normal, regular people dealing with billions. So that's why they started to focus on Binance. What is going on? Why they are letting these people trade billions without any certification, any regulation? So that really raised a flag for the congressional. So that's why they really focused on Binance. And when you read the final report, it's very interesting, because they really talk about crime figures, a lot of crime figures, and maybe the only regular company that is there, it's Binance, and Binance it's in the middle of really shady figures. So that, of course, that's why you are doing this. That's why it hit the big news, because it really bring our attention to this, because that's why Binance it was really a channel for these pyramid schemes in those last years in Brazil. That's why the congressional hearings are focusing on that. So yeah.
Got it. And even just looking through the report here, I think it's I was just doing Control F on the report, and Binance is mentioned like 350 times like in the report.
No.
And disclosure, I did I think we should just disclose like Mercado Bitcoin is obviously a competitor of Binance. Portal do Bitcoin is a subsidiary of Mercado Bitcoin, but is obviously editorially independent. And then Brazil Crypto Report has like no affiliation with anybody, so I'm fully my own voice here. But I will in the absence of like a Binance representative here, I will kind of like take their side on some things just to provoke discussion. But I mean, it does feel to me that the committee it does feel like it was a bit of a witch hunt against Binance in the sense, and there's even an article in Valor this morning where like Caio Viana, the one of the main guys on the committee, was specifically saying like this was not a witch hunt against Binance, but it does kind of feel like there was a bit of a witch hunt against Binance, just in some of the rhetoric that the deputies were using, and in just I think the amount of like just the amount that they were really like grilling Guilherme Nazar when he was testifying there. It did sort of feel like there was a bit of like this committee was just like the purpose of the committee was almost like to get Binance. It kind of, at least I got that impression. And I'm just, obviously it's like, look, like when you're dealing with congressional committees of this nature, all the guys in the committee have like varying levels of knowledge. And we've seen this in the US over the years where you have, members of Congress who show up to these hearings and they start asking like, what is a blockchain or whatever. So it's like there's very like varying levels of knowledge on these committees, and it's impossible to sort of read the minds and the intentions of the people that establish these things. But like, was this all? It just feels like to me like this was all created as a way of like trying to go after Binance in some capacity. So like we're gonna look at these pyramid scheme guys first, then we're gonna kind of layer on the fact that they use Binance, and we're going to ultimately kind of use this as a way to try to force Binance into, compliance, right? Or whatever the end goal with that would be. But I guess I'd love to get both of your reactions to that question of what was, I mean, am I crazy by thinking that, or am I onto something, or what's your reaction to that? Maybe Daniel, if you want to take that one. And then
so I think, Aaron, back to my point of, where a successful congressional hearing on this subject of Ponzi schemes would go, right, is really figuring out what the fragilities in the system have been allowing these phenomena to happen, right? So I think if we do take that objective into consideration, I don't think there would be any other outcome than this unavoidably having a fairly large focus on Binance as a key enabler for these schemes, right? And there's no single other player, be it Brazilian players or foreign players that operate in similar models with the foreign exchange concept that have been so associated with pretty much every single one of the schemes that have been mapped and investigated or prosecuted, right? I mean, that's unfortunately, I think, not a coincidence. And I can tell you, a number of these companies or operators, they have tried, and some have even successfully at some point opened accounts in Mercado Bitcoin and in other exchanges. But in every single case, companies that are significantly smaller and, let's say in theory, less savvy in terms of the systems and process capabilities to monitor and act on these situations, have managed to act on them, right? I mean, it's really, I think, just too flagrant, the fact that volumes of these size, the frequency, the number of companies for a number of years have been going on, and really to industry players and even industry clients, this is pretty much common knowledge, right? I mean, what has been very frustrating for players such as ourselves, and I do believe I speak on behalf of a lot of our peers in the industry, members of AB Crypto, who have been working towards building a healthy industry in Brazil. It has been very frustrating to see this level of facilitation or enablement, or just simply allowing all this to happen. And of course, this has a very negative effect on the industry overall, on every one of us, and how the industry develops. And I'll just point to what's happening in the US right now as reference, right? I mean, having the sort of regulatory discussions that players in the US industry have been calling for many years, but for one reason or another had not evolved. What is a security, what is not a security, what are the actual rules of the game? Having this on the back of such a massive fraud scheme like FTX's, right, which in many ways was another example of obvious mispractices for who was in the industry, that were simply allowed by lack of attention or lackness to take the size that it took. But having these discussions on the back of that is clearly not healthy at all, right? I mean, it's really hurting the industry. And I think the prospects of blockchain and crypto developing as it should, as a market infrastructure in the US, right? And that's something we all want to avoid in Brazil. I'll take as a local example, you probably saw the piece on Fantástico on the CPI, right? I mean, obviously it's a mass audience. They're not focusing on the nuts and bolts, but the image it's portraying is essentially huge pyramid schemes on crypto. This is not safe. This is not something that people should be connecting to. And we've been working very hard over the past 10 years to build a completely different perspective and industry environment. So I think for all of us that have been working in a very different direction, very diligently dealing with regulatory, and I'll put that in brackets, right? Because the regulation is not quite there. But on the other hand, there are very clear rules of the game, right? There is regulation in the traditional financial industry in Brazil that clearly points the direction, and many of which, had they been effectively observed or monitored here, would be closing the doors on a lot of this, right? I mean, we should always remember that Binance is connected to a number of regulated players who facilitate the on and off ramps. Part of those, let's say, broken relationships from the past provided a lot of the input for the committee to work on, and really, I'm very glad on the outcome, on the clarity, on the technical approach, and hopefully this will have a very salutary effect on the ongoing discussions for the regulation. I think timing is really great.
Yeah, the timing definitely is relevant here, just given the fact that we have the central bank is coming out with its regulations. It's just launched its public it's going to be launching its public consultations here shortly. And Fernando, would love to get your reaction to that, and then particularly the point that Daniel mentioned about, or he was alluding to, about the kind of the Capitual situation, right? Which it seems like they were some of the ones that they were, obviously there's a broken relationship between them and Binance, and they had some kind of nasty things to say about Binance in this committee. But would love to get some of your reaction to what we were just talking about, and then also, what are some of the things that we learned about Binance in this process that is maybe we didn't know before, and also keeping in mind that any public statement that we've heard Binance say is always, we're trying to fully comply, like we're helping the community as much as we can, we're fully regulated. They say all these things, are they? I mean, are they lying? Are they like compliant with like the things they need to be compliant with? Like how? I mean, how should we be interpreting these statements that they're making? I guess in light of what we've been learning here.
Yeah. So, as you said, Brazil has a scenario that is uh, Binance against the others, and it's a very strong and defined scenario. And you see that like the Brazilian Association of Crypto Companies has Mercado Bitcoin, has Bit, so that is the largest in Mexico, has big banks and has a lot of players. And Binance doesn't participate on this association. And we see on events, we see the panels with debates, and we see a lot of people from banks, from exchanges, from etc. And Binance is always absent from these events. So they have their agenda, and the other players have their own agenda, and that's natural, that's normal in the business. But this is the scenario, and I think it's the way of being the biggest. They are the biggest, a lot of liquidity, and they are dealing with the issue of being used by this crime endeavors. So I think to be clear with the audience, we have this scenario. I think this scenario, it goes along in other countries too. And we saw that on the process of the process of the law that was approved by the Congress. So the whole, almost the whole crypto system wanted segregate assets to be on the law. Binance was against, and this issue entered the law and was take off the law by everybody, and went in and out. That was the reflect of the fight that was happening behind the scenes. So, and I think that is normal in the when a bill is being debated and everybody has interests, and they search for the Congress people, the senators, and they explain their views, and this is normal. I think so. We have this scenario, but what we learned, it's that we didn't know. It's a lot of details. Like Binance has a lot of company ghost companies that they have just to be an intermediary between, in the final line, it's Changpeng Zhao, the CEO, and the other point, it's the Brazilian system. But between these 2 points, we have a lot of bizarre companies that they have like assets of 100 reais literally, and the committee was very keen in showing that on the report. So we can see these shell companies, we can see the very intricate ways that they deal. Well, just, I don't want to be to extend myself here, but they use like the bus account. They, as they say, they deposit the assets from every client in the same account, and they start to use that. And the congressional members said that this is a liability, that it's not acceptable. So it was there to debate. But as you said, Capital, it was the main partner from Binance here in Brazil. They were the company that do the, as Daniel said, the on and off ramps from Brazilian real to Binance, and they went separate ways on the last year. And now Capital has a lot of hard things to say about Binance, because they allegate that they did this because the central bank from Brazil asked to more know your customer actions, and Binance refused. And now they are disputing that. Binance is saying, oh, no, that's not the question. It was another question. And Capital said, up to 9% of the biggest clients from Binance, they are shady clients. So that was a huge. This provoked the congressman to ask for the list of the 700 biggest clients from Binance, and Binance refused to give that to the CPI.
Yeah,
So
that was an interesting. I was gonna have my next question actually. So there was an exchange where I think they when Guilherme Nazar was testifying, where one of the members of the committee hit him with this point that like 95% of your largest customers are money laundering, according to this study commissioned by Capitual or an analysis or whatever. And I think Nazar hadn't seen that information before, so he was kind of caught off guard. And he was like, "Oh, well, we'll give you the names of all these people if you request them. Like we won't hide them from you." And then the committee sent Binance a request for those names, and then Binance refused to provide the names, and they said it was like, oh, the request was too broad and we can't comply with it, which, and I think part of it was because the committee's like the time of the committee is winding down, right? There's only a week or two left, so I think Binance, maybe best case scenario, like, okay, maybe the request was too broad and they couldn't comply with it. Maybe worst case scenario is like they were just trying to run out the clock on the committee, and just by using stall tactics like this. But and then there was also another thing with their new payment processor, the Latam Gateway Company, which was the replacement for Capitual. The committee had asked for a contract on the contract that Binance had with this new company, and Binance also declined to give that, citing kind of the same reason, like, oh, there's not enough time to give it to you. I don't know. I mean, we'd just love your, either one, whoever wants to take this one, but would love your reaction to this development. This was a bit of a shocker, just given how enthusiastic, like it just went against some of the testimony that Nazar was giving about how, like, oh, we'll comply with whatever you need.
I think it definitely didn't help the outcome in terms of the point you made, right? I mean, this sort of action, not providing the requests, obviously is a bit of an insult to the local authorities, to Congress, and that certainly adds a bit of flavor there to the final report. But I think back, connecting to your previous question, and it's just not plausible, right? I mean, the size of things, this is not a one-off. This is, and everybody's subject to being, duped at some point by a smart Ponzi schemer. But when you look at the array of characters, these are not highly sophisticated individuals. They're not running very sophisticated schemes where they're looping or using technology or whatever it is, right? I mean, they're certainly nowhere near as smart as CZ. I can tell you that. We all have great admiration for the guy, and it's just not plausible that a company that would really be committed to combating this sort of thing, a company of this size, of these resources, of this brain power, knowledge. I mean, at one point in the U.S., and granted, it's a different structure, or supposedly an independent structure, but they had a number of very, very high caliber professionals, and they're always professing this, right? It's just not plausible that they would be, as I think one of the executives put, a victim every single time, right? And I think when you don't provide investigators or the committee with that sort of data, and listen, we were all requested. I'm not sure but we were all requested or had our own banking privileges broken, and have provided all the data. This was not a ride in the park for anybody, I think, in the industry, and as it should be, for a thorough investigation, right? And something that provides a base of comparison by which how different players in the industry are acting. So I think it's just not plausible. And when you look at evidence in other countries, and the investigations that have been happening in the US, all the messaging that's been vented around how the company has actually been managing, compliance-related issues and restrictions. It's just not there, and it seems pretty clear, on the ground at least, that there isn't really any intention beyond, maybe a bit of smoke and mirrors to get this done, right? I mean, they are arbitraging in every single case the loophole opportunities, the absence of specific regulation, or whatever it is in each country that provides, and whenever these doors shut down, more often than not, we're seeing Binance really pull out of the country and go back to a pure P2P model or different strategies, right? So not wanting to weigh in too heavily, and we are competitors, as you said, but we do have a number of other international competitors, right, who operate in Brazil, who we would challenge, the operation model, because we do feel that there is different burdens or too much room for regulatory arbitrage, fiscal arbitrage, etc. But I don't think we've seen anything or anyone, near the scale of fraudulent volumes running, by far. I mean, just look at the public data, right? I mean, how does one get to 70% market share in normal competing conditions? And we take a view on that market share that, a large part of that volume is for everybody else untouchable, right? It's just volume that wasn't there and wouldn't be there if there wasn't an enablement pipeline for capital flows that just shouldn't be flowing on serious crypto and blockchain platforms.
Right. And I guess, to argue the counterpoint of that, you could say, like, well, the reason they have the 70% market share or 60% or whatever it's at now is like, well, they just have a vastly superior product. But like, kind of the other argument would be like, well, what you're arguing is like, well, a lot of that volume is stuff that no other exchange would touch if you're trying to play by the
in
rules.
the US, I think the US is a good example, right? Completely separate operation, and one that, for the obvious reasons, they tried as much as possible to play within the sort of legal and regulatory framework, and there's nowhere near that advantage, right? I mean, they are a meaningful player, and don't get me wrong, we our hats are off to Binance in many respects, on product, on execution, on marketing. There's much to admire there, which just begs the question, right? I mean, do you really need to get into the shadier side of the industry, right?
Yeah, it's a good point.
If you're a point.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, because I think one point that is really important that we mentioned to the viewers, it's that the tax issues involving around Binance in Brazil, because this was a really focal point of in the testimony from Guilherme Nazar, because Binance don't pay taxes here in Brazil. When you don't pay taxes, you are really, how would I say, like ticking the tiger with the little stick, because the state won't be happy if you are not paying taxes, and that's I think a really big issue, and that's why I think it's one of the points that really made the congressional going after Binance, because by their calculations, Binance should be paying like 300 to 400 millions of reais, that is 6 to 8 millions of dollars annual in taxes here in Brazil. So this is very substantial. Like, this is a tax contribution from really big companies, and the state look to that and see, well, we are not receiving like $500 million of reais each year. So what is going on? So Guilherme said, well, we are operating as a foreign exchange. We are waiting for the central bank regulation, and that's true, because the central bank will impose the regulations, but from a person that it's not known with the peculiarities of the system would see, and how it is possible they sponsor the Brazilian biggest soccer tournaments, they does everything, and they don't pay taxes. How this is work? They have 200 people working for they in Brazil. They have an office in São Paulo, but they don't pay taxes because they are a foreign company. It's very strange, and I think this was the tax evasion. I think it was a point that really gave strength to the arguments from the Congress people. I would think that I don't know, Daniel. Sorry.
So just to clarify, is it that Binance, is the committee saying that Binance itself as an entity is not paying taxes, or just that the people trading on Binance are not paying taxes on, or they're not reporting these trades into the Receita Federal the same way that would happen if they're trading on
Daniel, I think, Daniel, it's better to explain that. But if you are a foreign exchange here in Brazil, the duty of declaring your taxes, it's by the clients, not the company. So that's why they are arguing. So, but overall, the volume of transactions in Binance should give 400 million in taxes for Brazil. Like if Binance it was a Brazilian exchange, it would be paying this amount of taxes. A local exchange has a much more it cannot escape this fiscal declarations.
I think
but
what
Daniel, it's obviously
I think what they were referring to with the 3 to 400 million, Aaron, is taxes on revenues, right? So these are taxes for the intermediation service that is provided, and is provided, generally in Brazil, right? Or that's where the operation is originating, and which Binance's position, I think, was made clear. They do not think they are liable, and they do not see themselves as providing those services in Brazil. I mean, there's all kinds of arguments there, right? To your question on reporting, on being responsible for client taxes, I mean, there is no specific obligation on any exchange for that, and it is the client's responsibility to handle his own, capital gains or whatever other tax is applicable. However, there is the Instrução Normativa 1888, which does define certain obligations by players serving Brazilian customers to provide data to the fiscal authorities, right? And that's something we and again most of the players here in Brazil comply to. Binance, I think that's another point the report makes does not, and I think they went public about that as well more than once, right? So I think what they mean on the tax side is really taxes that would have been owed had a normal structure where you have a company actually processing the volumes locally and capturing those fee revenues, and we all do, right? I mean, it's just part of I think operating in any industry, but certainly should be the case for all the exchanges as well.
Okay, no, that's helpful. That's helpful clarification. And I want to turn over to we got a couple time for a few more questions here. So I just want to touch on the recommended indictments themselves. In particular, there's the 4 Binance executives. So there's Guilherme Nazar, who's the Director General for Brazil. There's Daniel Mangabeira, who was I forget what his title is at the moment, but he was basically like the head guy in Brazil before they hired Guilherme Nazar. There's a lawyer, this guy Thiago Carvalho, who looks like, I think he's been with the company for maybe like 18 months. He was at like Genial and a couple of other kind of TradFi businesses before Binance, and then also CZ. So these 4 guys were recommended to be indicted, I guess, by the committee. And I guess the question for me is like, okay, like what? Okay, like the committee put out a statement saying that okay, these guys did some bad things. Okay, fine. Like what comes next? And what exactly? Maybe Fernando, if you want to touch on like what exactly are they being accused of, or are they being? Is the recommendation that they be indicted for what exactly? And then would like to talk a bit about like what comes next here. Like if I'm CZ and I'm like, oh, okay, this committee said put out this thing saying I should be indicted. Like okay, like what do I make of that?
Well, the committee does the report and send to the prosecutors, and the prosecutors decide sorry, let's go back.
Okay, yeah, we can try it again.
So okay, they send the report, the final report, to the prosecutors, and the prosecutors decide if they will go after real indictments, or if they will do nothing. That is very common in Brazil. Every congressional hearing, every committee does that. They are requesting the executives to be indicted for operating a financial institution without authorization, for operating a financial institution in a fraudulent way, and they are being requesting to be indicted of selling derivatives without permission of the Brazilian authorities. So that is in theory, these are crimes punishable with jail time, but I think it's very unlikely that this is going to happen. I think the main consequential, it will be the pressure, the heat on Binance. I think the heat, it's way more up now. They in this report they are saying to directly to the Brazilian central bank, don't allow them to buy a Brazilian financial institution, because with that they will be able to operate in a more freely way, and they are in the middle of this negotiation. It's a company, Brazilian exchange, that is named Simpo, and Binance is trying to acquire this institution and to be free to operate in Brazilian market. And the committee said to don't allow them to buy. So I think the consequential, it was a lot of pressure in Binance. I see this, a lot of pressure, because it's very spot on this parts of the Binance system, the Binance ways of operating in Brazil. But well, in theory, the prosecutors will decide if they go after the indictments or not. We'll need to wait to see.
Got it. So going back to the point about the Simpol brokerage that they've been trying to acquire this for like over a year now, from what, if I remember correctly. It's been a long time that they've been like in talks about doing this, and presumably for them to acquire a license from the central bank once the licensing framework is released and the regulatory framework is released next year, they would need to have one of these. They would need to have like this brokerage, right? Because this brokerage is like a regulated financial institution, and so without being able to purchase this brokerage, they would have a much more difficult time applying for a license to be a crypto, to be a VASP, basically.
If I can comment on that, Aaron, I don't think that's the case. I mean, there's a number of exchanges, and who do not have brokerage licenses or do not have any other central bank issued licenses. Currently, as you know, the activity does not require a license, right? I mean, what we expect as an outcome of the final write-up of the bill is that a specific license for a VASP, a value-added service provider, a virtual asset, service provider, will be designed as part of regulating specifically the activity, right? There's no indication that any other licenses would be required to operate a digital asset exchange. You may require, other licenses for specific activities. So let's say you want to actually be able to provide electronic money functions, right? Such as we decided to do here. So you have to file for a payments institution license, right? I mean, if you want to run other asset classes or futures, you may want to, go for a traditional market. But I think the expected outcome is that there will be a specific license for operating a spot volume digital asset exchange in Brazil, which won't necessarily require other licenses.
Got it. So this Simpol brokerage acquisition may or may not necessarily impede Binance from getting a license with the central bank once these separate VASP licenses are available to be applied for. But presumably this whole report and this whole process will make. I mean, it's hard to imagine this making it easier for Binance to get one of these licenses once they come out. I suppose is maybe the main takeaway. Well, guys, I know we're at time here, so maybe I would just love to get like a quick final thought from each of you on maybe what comes next, or what's been most noteworthy about this final report here, as you see. If there's any other points you want to make on this, and then we'll wrap it up here. Fernando, you want to go first?
Yeah. So I think the outcome of all of this, it is the pressure in Binance. It's higher than ever here in Brazil and abroad. So we'll really need to wait and see what is going on in the next months, in the next year. And it's such a lot of things that will happen. The halving, it's coming. The regulations in Brazil are going to be placed by central bank, and we are seeing Binance facing a lot of pressure in a lot of countries. So I think Brazil it's one of them, and I think the outcome it's that the pressure in Binance it's higher than ever. They are really on the spot of the regulators, the authorities, the police, the congressmen. So let's see what's going on.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting too that Brazil has been consistently Binance's second or third largest market globally as well. This isn't a trivial part of their business here by any stretch. But Daniel, any final thoughts from you?
Sure. I think, I'll change note a little bit. And I think, probably the most important outcome, whatever, specific players or conclusions, is really how this impacts, the upcoming developments in the industry, and particularly as it relates to the regulation, right? I think that's a very, very watershed moment in any industry, and we fully expect it to be the case here in Brazil. I think, everything we've seen so far, from Congress, from Banco Central, has been some very impressive, very professional, very technical work through what is, naturally a very complex, very sensitive industry, something that connects, directly to the broader financial system. I'll go back to my initial comment. We do feel that the outcome of this committee and the report will very much inform in a positive and constructive way the discussions and the work that is ahead. So, I'll close on that very positive note. I think we hope to see this as another sort of a step in a journey towards building that regulatory infrastructure and clarity so that the industry can develop even further.
Amazing. Well, great. Thank you so much, Daniel and Fernando, for joining the show today on a bit late notice. So very much appreciate your time. I will include LinkedIn bios for each of you, or links to your LinkedIn bios in the show notes, so folks can get in touch if they have more questions. But really appreciate both of your time here this afternoon, and we will thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.